Hello, my name is Ina Lipkowtiz and I teach literature here at MIT. As anyone who teaches literary text knows, one of the hardest things to do is to get students to read closely, to pay close attention to words rather than generalize about the big ideas. The beauty of Annotation Studio is that it forces students to pay close attention and to anchor their responses to specific words and/or passages in whatever it is they're reading. I've been very impressed with the way students have focused their thoughts in the two classes that I've used Annotation Studio in. The first class was reading historic cookbooks. The idea behind the class was that recipes read closely illuminate the cultures that produced them, pointing to historical forces, religious concerns, nutritional theories, gender concerns, economic issues, changing technology, among many other things. By the end of the semester, each student produced an annotated historical cookbook, which drew upon secondary sources that I'd assigned or that students found on their own. The recipe you're looking at right now, apple moi, which is basically apple mush or applesauce, is from an early English recipe collection dating to the late 14th century. The students' annotations, as you can see, open up the recipe to reveal many concerns distinctive of the late medieval period: the merging of French and English in the recipe's Middle English title, the fact that the fruit is seethed reflects the medieval theory of the humors that held that cold fruit had to be heated in order to avoid throwing the system out of balance. The almond milk reflects Catholic fast days on which no animal products, including dairy, could be eaten. The use of honey rather than sugar, which wouldn't arrive in Europe for some centuries yet, and the almonds, saffron, and powder fort all reflect the spices and exotic ingredients brought back to Europe by returning crusaders. In other words, annotating this one simple recipe taught the student quite a lot about the world that produced it. The final project of the semester was a historical cookbook in which students chose recipes from the 14th century to the present day and developed their annotations into informed, contextualized, and specific discussions of the particular recipes. The next time I used Annotation Studio, in a class I teach on the Bible, I had a different pedagogical purpose in mind. Rather than having students explicate or explain a text on their own, I wanted them to appreciate how many different ways biblical texts can be and have been read and understood. In order to do this, I had the students work collaboratively rather than individually. I divided the class into groups. You can easily create such groups with Annotation Studio, assigning each group a specific topic to keep in mind as they read the text. For instance, when we read the book of Genesis, different groups were assigned such topics as different names of God and differences in the two accounts of creation. When we read the Gospels, groups were assigned to read with an eye on differences in the nativity narratives and the characterization of Judas. What you're looking at now is a dialogue that emerged when a group of students was annotating a section of the book of Exodus. Their group was called Why the Unleavened Bread? And as you can see, when forced to read closely, the students observed that there are in fact different reasons given in the Bible for the unleavened bread. On the one hand, the Israelite slaves had to rush out of Egypt with no time for their bread to rise. On the other hand, as the second student noted, the Lord planned the Exodus out ahead of time, so what was the big rush about? This led the students to a dialogue about whether God depicted in Exodus is in fact omniscient. Each group then presented its findings in class, which led to discussion about the many ways biblical texts can be read and understood. The annotations became the basis of their written work, and I know that a study is underway correlating their annotations with the success and specificity of their finished essays. Finally, I'd like to quote something a student wrote in his or her course evaluation at the end of the Bible class. I would like to see more Annotation Studio exercises. Those were really helpful, and it was interesting to see the comments of other people. Also, it made me feel like my comments weren't completely off base when I saw people commenting about similar things.